Welcome to Kindness in Motion, where courage, curiosity and connection lead the way. I'm Suzy, and together with Perry, we don't tiptoe around the truth, we dance with it. Settle in and enjoy yourself.
Today we're joined by someone whose work and presence we deeply admire, Dr. Kirsten. She's a mother first and foremost, and her understanding of children's emotional worlds comes from both lived experience and years of supporting families through some of the most complex challenges. Her career has taken her from working within the prison system to her current role as a child psychologist, where she brings a rare blend of compassion, clarity, and grounded expertise.
And alongside all of that, she also brings the insight of a late diagnosed ADHD woman, something that deepens her understanding of children and relationships. Today, though, we're focusing on your professional experience as a psychologist and exploring what kindness really means, how it develops, how it protects, and how we can help flourish. You like being called Dr. K, that's right, isn't it?
Dr. K is much easier than my actual surname, so yes.
So we're going to open with a big question. What does kindness mean to you? Not just as an idea, but as something that you've seen in children, families, and real moments.
Thank you. Do you know what? It's been a lovely question to ponder, so I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today to talk about it and to think about it in advance of our meeting. And I like the concept around kindness in motion that you coined, Suzy. I think the thing that's really important for me about that is it's something active and it's something that's intentional. And kindness, I think when I think about the work from Carol Dweck, do you know her work on growth mindset and fixed mindset? Have you come across that?
No.
Oh, yay!
Send us a link.
So Carol Dweck talks about the idea that we can sometimes think of ourselves as having a growth mindset where we believe that we can learn and adapt and develop skills, or we can think of ourselves as someone who is born with a certain amount of capacity and skill, and that's just what we've got. That's our fixed ability. And her work on that area is basically around the idea that if we have a growth mindset, we are happy, we are more engaged in our life because actually we can develop and we can grow and we can learn these things. And I think that sometimes when we think about kindness, we can sometimes think of it as like a fixed mindset type thing, that you're born with this certain ability of kindness and that's your limit. That's, you're just a really kind person, you're a really kind kid or whatever. And actually, I like to think of it as a growth concept, that actually it's something we can learn and we can develop and we can work towards,
I think we've had conversations before about being a kind person, and kindness isn't something that you necessarily are, but it's something that you do. It's an active skill.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree. And I think sometimes we aren't kind. Sometimes we are, as organisms, as human beings, we are self-preservation based. We want to kind of perpetuate what we are. But actually, when we think about kindness, it's a skill that we can develop and we can grow towards. From a self-preservation point of view, it's something that, is helpful, of course. When you're kind, it helps your community and it helps your sense of safety amongst that community. So there's benefits to it, of course. But I think it's one of those things that you aren't just born with it. You can learn it, you can grow towards it if you are intentional. And I love that, because if we're just born with it, then what can we do? We can just observe that that's a kind person, I'm not a kind person, or I am and they're not, and actually
He does that.
Well, I just because I recognise that I am not up there on the fluffy hugs and rainbows kind of like interpersonal warmth scale. I'm quite a cold person.
But you know what? That's okay.
And I like my interpersonal distance.
Really? I don't think that.
Suzy's like,
I've been on the receiving. This is my first time meeting you, and I recognise it's online, but I definitely haven't got any coldness from you at all. You seem very warm.
Thank you. It's the double layers.
Yeah. So I think that yes, my cosy jumper. But I think it's really important to recognise that we do kindness differently. Not everybody wants kindness in the same way. Not everybody wants fluffy, warm hugs and, kind of deep moments of connection where you're saying, and how are you and what's going on? Actually, sometimes people want kindness to be, let me get your groceries for you. Or do you need the lawn mowing? Or can I watch the kids? Do you need a nap? Do you want to, there's lots of different things. And I think that it's really important. For me, kindness is intentional and it is very much based around what the other person needs. That's true kindness. If I say to you, please, I've got this horrible situation, I need to just have some headspace to deal with it by myself, please can you do X, Y, and Z so that it gives me the capacity to do that? And then the person turns up and says, no, I thought you wanted support. And I'm saying my support was you not being here and me having a moment on my own. To me, that's true kindness, listening and doing what the person is asking for, or observing and doing what the person's showing that they need, rather than doing what you think they want.
So one of the things I'm looking at the moment is something called the friendship bench. So it was created in Zimbabwe, but it's starting to sort of filter out into Europe and the UK. Fingers crossed. I'm actually going to try and apply. So I noted you saying listening, and how important is listening in the act of kindness?
Massively important. And you're not just listening to the words that people are speaking, you're listening to their body language, their tone, their kind of expressions, the micro expressions on their face. And, you know, some people are better at that than others, granted. And so, you know, sometimes it's a skill that you just naturally have. Sometimes it's something that you do need to develop and learn about. But actually sitting and listening and being present, truly present with somebody, that's, to me, and that's why I love my job, that's to me the biggest act of kindness that we can offer. You know, just being present with somebody.
Well, this is kind of going a bit off piece, but that's our podcast. We always do. But with listening, it's like they were talking about active listening, and I'm kind of like, what's active listening? Surely your ears are that, and then you do it.
So one of the things that's really interesting, and this is an exercise that people can do at home as well if you wanted to. At home as well if you wanted to. Recognizing that when we actively listen, when we're demonstrating something with the way that we're doing it, we're not just using our ears, we're using our body and our facial expressions and our gesturing to show that we're listening. So right now while I'm speaking, you're nodding. So right now while I'm speaking, you're nodding. You know, those sorts of smiling. You know, those sorts of gestures tell me that you're here with me in this moment, even though we're doing it online. I sense that we're connected because of that shared conversation that shared conversation, mirroring each other, mirroring each other, and gesturing together, hand gesturing together, hand movements, things like that. You were speaking to me right now. And you were speaking to me right now. Completely blank face. I were to go completely blank face, nothing, right? And do nothing, right? Instant fear, isn't it? It's instant fear, isn't it? And immediately, what it does is it has an impact on the way that your brain functions, and it affects the frontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that we need for logic, for language, reason, thinking, problem solving. And actually, if you were to do this now, you can do this as an exercise. If you have one person as the active speaker and one person as the listener, and so someone's speaking, and you just need to speak for 1 minute on a subject that you can speak about for a minute. So maybe it's what you're going to do for dinner, maybe it's where you're going on holiday, maybe it's your bad day that you've had, whatever it is. You speak about it confidently for a minute. The listener as they normally would. So they nod along, they smile, they gesture, they go interesting. They kind of show that they're engaged for 30 seconds. And then after 30 seconds, they just wait. They have their blank face. So they have their blank face. And what happens as a response? And what happens to the speaker? In my experience, when I've done this in training, get bigger. And they try and make the story as interesting as they can, and they try and make the story as interesting as they can, and they move more, and they laugh, and they joke, and they gesture because they're trying to get somebody along. Like, please listen to me and notice me. This is okay. Are we all right here? They laugh, and they go. They laugh. This feels uncomfortable. I don't really want to do this anymore, and I don't really want to do this anymore, and they kind of stop speaking. It forces people into their fight or interaction. You either fight through interaction, or you run away. And the reason that we do that is because it heightens your stress response so significantly that you actually can't function anymore. And what we find is that people find their words anymore, they stumble over what they're saying, they get stuck and lost because their frontal cortex goes offline. Yeah. So they go back only to their limbic system, which is the part of their brain that they use for impulsivity. So actually, active listening is so important because if we don't do it, your person gets in their body and in their brain, and then they can't interact in a way that they feel comfortable with, and then we get thinking, oh, that was a bit of a strange conversation, but often it's because the active listening is not there. So it's really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, so as you've been saying that, I can see myself on the cameras, and I'm like, am I being responsive enough? Which is kind of like a trap as well, because if I'm thinking that, then I'm obviously not entirely attending to what you're saying, even though I found it fascinating and I was paying attention.
This is the battle. This is the battle with cameras, where you can see yourself. It's really hard not to kind of start looking at yourself and check that you're doing the action bit that you should. I think we all do that self-monitoring bit anyway in conversations. Neurodivergent people will do it more. I have ADHD, so for me, I do find myself sometimes going a little bit like, am I in the moment? And what sometimes happens, I know we're not talking about it too much today, but what can sometimes happen for people with ADHD is they can be very good at eye contact when they are listening, but then when the other person is find it a little bit intense, they can kind of find it away a little bit, and then they might look away a little bit. No, sorry, I got that the wrong way round. It's the other way round. When they are speaking, they can find it more challenging. It's tricky, but I think what you have to recognise is that everyone's going to do the active listening bit slightly differently, and sit comfortably with that in your own skin. I think is the important thing. But recognising that sometimes you will drift in your attention, and you'll go, am I looking like I'm listening okay? Yeah, I think I probably am. Okay, back to it. And that's all right. I think everybody does that. Neurodivergent people do it more.
Thank you. That's a really helpful reference and a kind of a way to frame it.
Yeah. It's answered a very vital question for me, because one of my panics is, if we do the friendship branch, am I going to listen effectively for that person?
Yeah.
I now feel that I might be able to do that. But when you talk about the frontal cortex, I know with kindness, there is a reaction on both sides, isn't there? A chemical reaction.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I have got a few notes. So I do want to, because obviously the chemical is kind of specific. But yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that's important to recognise is kindness isn't just a feeling. That happens neurologically and biologically. You know, and when we think about from the biopsychosocial model, so the biological, psychological, and psychological aspects. There are things that marry together really nicely. To be kind, the interaction offers us something. So kindness is never really altruistic. It's giving you something in that moment, even kind to somebody else. So that's the wonderful benefit you're always going to get something from it when you're kind. As long as you're being kind in a safe way, and in some kind of boundaries, and keeping yourself safe. But yeah, absolutely. Let me grab my notes, because I want to make sure that I spoke about some of these bits with competence. So let me just run to my bits on the.
So I might be going back a little bit, but just while you're reviewing your notes, it was really helpful to hear you say that when people listen, they might be listening in different ways. Because I know that sometimes I can be really engaged in what someone's saying, but my eyes are going to go all around the place. And I'll be visualizing 1 second, and then really in my emotions and feeling it. It'll be a whole sensory journey for me that may look a little bit scatty to whoever I'm speaking to, because it's not a coherent, still, I'm listening to you. It's very physical impulses firing off all over the place. And so it was really helpful and validating to hear from you that people do listen in different ways. And that does look different.
Just as long as
absolutely, and as long as you don't do the blank face, absolutely. And I think that's the thing that's really important. I think is that we need to make the experience more explicit and state it. So if that is your way of listening, then there's absolutely no reason why, while someone's talking to you in that moment with them, you can't say, I am feeling so deeply around this for you, and I really am here alongside you, and that might look slightly different as I'm processing it in my body. But I just want to know, I'm so grateful for you for sharing that with me, and I'm sharing that with me, and I'm with you on that journey right now. I'm feeling all the feelings right now. That's powerful. And so what we know with kindness is that it does release huge amounts of kindness is that it does release huge amounts of dopamine, dopamine and serotonin, feel the chemicals, they're connecting chemicals in your brain. But also dopamine is really vital for getting stuff done. You know, it's a motivator. So it's not just about I feel good because I've got a bit of dopamine, and now I want to do some more of that. And now I want to do more of that thing. So it's really neurochemical for. So it's really good as a kind of neurochemical. So the more kindness you do, the more comfortable you get with it, the more you want to do it. The more kindness you do, the more comfortable you get with it, and then the more you want to do it, which is great.
Oh, and what kind of impact does kindness and, I suppose, acts of kindness for the doer and also for the recipient have on cortisol levels.
Yeah, reduces them, which is wonderful. I mean, we all need a bit of cortisol, anxiety and stress hormones, and getting stuff done, and we need a degree of vigilance. Sometimes it turns into hypervigilance. So if you're doing a driving test or whatever, you need a bit of anxiety because you need to be kind of aware of your environment. If you didn't have any at all, you'd be like too laid back, and you'd.
I can just imagine that. You're just driving along and then poof, and you're like, oh well, So we need to be responsive. So we need a degree of that. And I think that sometimes cortisol can get a little bit of a bad rap because we think of it only as this kind of stress hormone that's problematic. And actually, we need our anger. We need our stress because it motivates us again to get stuff done. Women have the votes because we were angry enough and we were angry enough about it. And so in the world, we do need our stress hormone for to get us to kind of motivate and do things. Having said that. There is so much sadness, so much anger, so much aggression in the world and amongst groups of people that absolutely heightens cortisol. And I'm, as a psychologist, I'm really secondary trauma that people are receiving through looking at the news articles on social media, actually watching the news. When we unfortunately, we're in a place now where we can get access to all the most horrific things that are happening across the entire globe, and we're aware of it. Years and years ago, we knew what was happening in our kind of tribe, in our little village, and we knew that this bad thing, but this good thing, and it was kind of mediated, moderated. With all the stress that we're aware of in the wider scheme of the world, that can cause huge amounts of cortisol, and it causes big problems, and it causes make us very down, very demotivated. Because it does, like you say, that kind of like huge spike in that stress hormone that we can't do anything about because it's not at our fingertips. So actually, what we can do instead is act more kindly, and do more kindness so that we can reduce that cortisol. Now, I'm not suggesting we don't want to know about the bad things that are happening in the world. We need to know about them, serotonin hits that we need that can allow us to and mediate that. Now, I'm not suggesting we don't want to know about the bad things and we need to know about to change, but actually and make a difference. Living in that so much secondary trauma on our shoulders isn't the way that we're designed to be. So we do need some respite from that. But actually, and I think living in that state and having so much secondary trauma on our shoulders isn't the way that we're designed to be. So we do need some respite from that. And I think kindness can be the answer, really. That's interesting, actually, because of how kindness in motion came about.
Absolutely.
It was because of that cortisol. But now I can see kindness as the free dopamine pill. Yes! You were going to ask something.
No, I have some ideas linking in my mind. They're not linked yet. So as soon as that comes to like an actual question, I'll let you know.
Okay, while you think,
go for it.
I will ask about oxytocin because I read oxytocin was so important, and
absolutely,
it was released
it's
every time people
it's the love hormone. It's one that helps us feel contained, and it doesn't have to be romantic love. It's just containing, connecting. It's the love hormone. It's things like self-esteem, how we feel in our bodies, how we feel connected. And I think the really lovely thing when we're thinking about affects things like self-esteem, neurochemical releases. Is there are all these wonderful neurochemicals that we can have inside our own brains, but there's something neurochemical releases. Is yes, there are all these wonderful neurochemicals in my life inside our own brains, but there's something when we connect well with somebody else, there's like this, but definitely well experienced in my life where when we connect well with somebody else, just feels like contained and connected, energy shift, and it just feels lovely. And where that, when you go to a specific friend, feels contained and connected to support you with that, and you know that this one friend would not be a good person to go to because they'll make a joke out of it. And right now you don't need that, and you go to you won't go to that friend. You need them sometimes, but not know that this one friend would not be a good person. And then this other friend will make a joke out of it. Right now you don't need fixing. You won't go to that one right now. You need them sometimes, but not for this person that you know. And then this other friend will be practical and they'll be like, how can we fix it? And you think, I don't quite need that right now. But there's this one person and being felt by them in that moment, and you know that you will go to them and love, your shoulders will drop, and you'll be able to exhale, being seen, and you'll be able to feel seen and safe in that moment, and you know that the joy of oxytocin, your shoulders will drop, and you'll be able to exhale, and you'll be able to cry, and that's what, and you'll be able to feel seen. That's what I try to embody when I'm working, but it's what I embody is with the joy of oxytocin. Kids need it so much because there are so many scenarios where they feel not good enough. Seek out. That's what I always try to embody when I'm working with people, but it's to adjust and behave slightly differently. Children, that kids need it so much can be really powerful. There are so many scenarios where they feel not good enough or not completely seen or like they need to adjust and behave slightly differently, that actually offering that can be really powerful.
And do you think that we are more in touch with that instinct to be able to hold space for people, or
I think
less in touch with it
I'm a
than
millennial,
kind of other generations?
and I would say that we are
Like me,
probably
old.
one of the more recent generations to get back in touch with it.
So I'm a millennial,
But I think that we aren't as in touch with it
and
as
I would
perhaps
say that
we would have
we
been
are
several hundred years
probably
ago.
one of the more
You know,
recent
so I think that-
generations to get back in touch with it.
But I
can't
think that we
speak
aren't
very
as in touch with
confidently
it as
on
perhaps
this,
we would have
but
been
my
several
kind of
hundred years ago.
you know, so I think that
all
and
is
I,
that we
I
do tend
can't
to go
speak very
through these
confidently
swings
on this, but my kind
history.
of summarization.
So you have things
is
like
that we do tend to go through
wars,
these swings,
and they
in
produce certain people that have to
history.
endure
So
certain
you have things like
atrocities and
wars,
certain horrific things
and
that are
they
happening in their life.
then we
Produce
bring about
certain people that have to
and then that might bring
endure
about
certain
and then that might bring
atrocities
about less
and
compassion,
certain
because
horrific
actually
things
we
that are
just got to
happening
get
in their
through
life.
it.
And so then we
And
bring
so
about
this isn't just
scarcity.
about
Generations being challenging. It's about what each generation has to endure.
because
And I think what we find is that
the millennial
generations being challenging. It's about what each generation has to endure.
between,
And I think what we find
people that have experienced
is
quite
that
significant
the millennial
hardship
generation
in their kind of parents
have
potentially
been one that
off
are
the back
bridging
of
that gap
their
between
parents
people that
having
have
gone through
experienced
a
quite
war and so it
significant
kind of like
hardship
works
through
in
that
their
kind of
parents
system
potentially off the
that
back
then
of
millennials
their parents'
position
parents
of
having gone
that
through
was
a war and
warm,
so it kind of
but I
like
don't
works
want that to
through
be my
that
children's
kind of
experience,
system
and so they try
that then
manage
millennials
those
are at that position
interactions.
of,
I know for
that
me
was
as
my
a
lived
parent,
experience,
it's hard
but I don't
because
want
I
that to
know
be
the
my
stuff
children's lived
psychologically,
experience,
because obviously
and so
as a
they're trying
psychologist I've read it
to
all,
manage
but doing
those
it
interactions
on a regular
I know for me as a
basis
parent, it's
to
it's
two
hard because
neurodivergent
I know
kids
the
with
stuff
PDA, that
psychologically, because
is
obviously as a
tricky.
psychologist I've read
It's
it all.
hard going.
But doing
And
it
so I'm
as a
exhausted
mum
sometimes
on
I
a
do
regular
find myself
basis,
just because I
to
told
two
you so, just
neurodivergent
do
kids
it,
with
you know.
PDA, that is
And in
tricky.
reality, that's not what I
It's
want
hard
to say.
going, and so I'm exhausted. And
me,
sometimes I do find myself saying,
we have to really
because
think
I told
about
you so, just do
individuals
it, you know,
as people who have
and in reality, that's not
an
what I
initial
want
reaction
say.
to something,
And I think that
and then a
for
secondary
me,
reaction.
we have to really think about
And for me,
individuals.
the thing that makes me
as
feel a little
people
bit
who
better
have
is my
an
initial reaction to
reaction
something
is based on
and
my
then a
lived
secondary
experiences.
reaction.
And for
What
me,
society
the thing
has
that
told
makes
me
me
I
feel a
need
little
to be
bit better
doing
is my initial reaction
and any traumas that
is
I've
based
got.
on my
And
lived
so that is coming out as a kind
what
of
society has told me I
safety
need to be
strategy.
doing, how I've been
My
parented,
secondary
and
reaction
any traumas
is
that I've
perhaps
got.
the one that's
And so
more
that is
measured,
coming
that
out
goes
as a
kind
kind
of
of, know what
do I
safety
really
strategy.
think?
My
What do I
secondary
do
reaction
now,
or do I want to be
the one
a
that's
kind
more
of version
measured
of myself
that goes
in this
actually,
moment
what
that
do I
isn't
really think?
affected
What do I
by
really want
away
to
with
do
the
about
triggers
this?
that
Do I
I'm
really want to shout
and
right now?
make sure
Or do I
that
want
is
to be
really
a
kind of version of myself
key in
this
all my
moment that
interactions?
isn't
Because your initial
affected
reaction to
by
something and
the
your
hormones
initial
coursing through my body,
might
the
not be the one that you
neurochemicals
truly
that are
want to
firing
embody.
away,
It's a
the
gut
triggers
reaction,
that
yeah,
I'm
exactly like
responding to.
there. It's like,
And so because of that, I try and make sure that apologising is really
key in all my interactions, because your initial reaction to something and your initial kind of behaviour might not be the one that you truly want to embody. It's a gut reaction, yeah, exactly like you did there. It's that kind of like gut instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking around that framing in the fact that there are primary impulses and secondary kind of reactions. How can we be maybe not necessarily kinder to ourselves, but operate from the space of maximum kind of kindness when it comes to how we speak to ourselves internally about those reactions, not only in terms of being kind and manifesting a kind response, but to recognize our own responses and why they're there. And
It's like my favourite saying at the end of any of my lives on
Absolutely.
TikTok is always be kind to yourself and then to others.
Yeah.
So that's basically what you're kind of looking at, is it?
Well, yeah, I think just because you can start with awareness and you can be aware of something, but then like it's not necessarily the best way to go about.
I think the
the
psychology on it and the science and the psychology would say absolutely. First of all, you have to recognise it. What we know is that you can't change anything if you don't know that you're doing it, or if you don't recognise it as something that needs change. So I think absolutely first of all, you have to recognise
noticing it.
What we know is that
telling
you
yourself
can't change anything if you don't know that you're
for
doing
me,
it. Or
it's an act of kindness to say to myself, that's your initial reaction. That's absolutely first of all noticing it and recognising it and telling yourself.
For me, it's an act of kindness
to say to
who
myself,
I
that's your
am
initial
is a
reaction.
product of my lived experiences and my biology.
So how do you actually
intergenerational trauma that's been passed down
because the
through
reality is,
my DNA.
who I am
It's not necessarily who I want
my
to
lived
be.
experiences
And so
my
who I want
biology
to, where I'm
and
trying to get to,
intergenerational
but I have to
trauma that's been
acknowledge
passed
and
down
sit
through
with
my
who
DNA
I actually am
is not
on a
necessarily
kind
who
of
I want to
perspective.
be, so that I can
And
move
so who I
beyond
want
that.
to be
So I think first
is
of all, it's
where I'm
acknowledging
trying to get
it,
to, but
and
I
I
have
do
to
think,
acknowledge,
yeah, absolutely,
and
being
sit
kind
with
to yourself
who
in
I
that
actually
is
am
ask myself,
on a
can
kind
I
of
say, this isn't
biological
who I want to
perspective.
be, so
This
that
is
I
how
can
I am
move
at the
beyond
moment,
that.
and
So
I'm
I think
aiming
first of all,
for
it's
something
acknowledging
slightly
it,
different from
and I
that.
do think,
But
yeah,
also,
absolutely,
there
being
is good
kind
in
to
me,
yourself in that.
and
That is
where
an
is
act
the
of
good
kindness
there
that I
that I
do
can
for myself,
see?
and I say,
Because
this
we
isn't who
speak
I
to
want
ourselves
to
so
be.
unkindly
This is how I am
sometimes,
at the
you know,
moment, and
and
I'm
so
aiming for
one of the
something
things that I
slightly
like to try
different
and do
from that. But
if I
also,
catch
there
myself,
is
I
good
think
in
to
me.
myself,
And
if
where
you
is
said
the
those
good there
words to
that
your
I
best
can
friend,
see?
how would that feel
Because
for
we
you?
speak to ourselves so
Would you
unkindly
speak to your, would you
sometimes,
speak to say that to your
and
best
so
friend? Would you say
one of
that
the things that I
to
like
a
to try
person
and
walking
do
down the
is,
street?
if I catch myself doing
And if
that,
you
I think to
wouldn't,
myself, if you said those words to your best friend, how
why
would
is
that
it
feel
okay
for
for us
you?
to say it
Would
to
you speak to your,
ourselves?
would
You
you speak to your
know,
children like
so
that?
I
Would you
think
say
that
that to your
kindness
best
has
friend?
to.
Would you say
You're
that
right,
to
Susie.
a
It does
person
have to
walking down the
start at
street?
home.
And if you
But it's
wouldn't,
really, really hard to
why
do
is it
that.
okay for us to say it to
And
ourselves?
so I think that some of this is around.
So I think that
recognising
kindness
that
has
actually,
to. You're right,
it's a
Susie.
life.
It does have
Progress.
to start at home,
And you're not going to be kind all the time.
but it's really,
And
really
we're going to
hard
get it
to
wrong.
do that.
And we're going to be horrible
And so
to
I think
ourselves,
that
and we're
some
going to
of
be horrible
this
to other
is
people,
around
and we're going to need to
recognising that
apologise,
actually
and that's okay.
it's a lifelong work in progress.
And you're not going to be kind all the time, and we're going to get it wrong, and we're going to be horrible to ourselves, and we're going to be horrible to other people, and we're going to need to apologise, and that's okay.
I'm sorry, Perry. Yeah, you have nothing to apologise for.
No, I'm apologising for a row we had just before Christmas. It's like, it's been, we sorted it. He's forgotten it.
Right.
But
I'm slightly
didn't.
worried now.
Oh no, don't be worried.
I'm like, what?
It was fine. It got
Do you know
resolved.
what?
It's just now I feel like
apologies can be hard to receive. They can be hard to give. But I think it's one of those things that we have to practice doing. But I think it's one of those things that we have to practice doing. And you know, I can be quite bad at when someone apologises to me. I kind of just go, oh, it's okay, and kind of brush it off. Even when it's not okay. And I want to be like,
But it's really vulnerable to actually sit in that moment and be with someone and actually accept the truth of their apology from the vulnerable place of having been hurt by it.
Absolutely right. Because you have to admit it then. You have to admit that you've been hurt. It is.
And it takes trust. It takes trust to build any kind of apology foundation, because you've got to be able to show up with that other person. It's not just being brave enough to do it, it's having the emotional apparatus to be able to connect and accept that.
So obviously, like you say, it's a lifelong process, but what can we do with, say, children? How do we teach them?
I think the first thing we have to do is show them kindness. I think the first thing for me, that is one of the biggest things. For me, that is one of the biggest things. We can't develop and learn about it unless we're shown it. We can't develop and learn about it unless we're shown it. You know, there are some children that I will have adults say to me, they just have no empathy. And I will have adults say to me, they just not because they don't have for it, it's because they've never been shown. They don't have the capacity for it. Their brain hasn't, because they've never been structured in any kind of way. Their brain hasn't goes through any part of their any kind of way that goes through any part of their. So when we've had harsh lived experiences, it can be really hard. When we've had harsh lived experiences, it can be really hard to had it. So I think that's the first thing that has to do is show kindness to children, because we've not had it. So I think that's the first thing we have to do is show kindness to children. Some of our school systems, secondary schools, some of our school systems geared up for that in the way that they need to be. Geared up for that in the way that they need to be, and there can be a real. It's weird to me. Primary schools that I work in don't have this mantra. There's a lot more kindness that I see on a daily basis in primary schools. But then all of a sudden, when kids get older, we seem to go back to the notion of children should be seen and not heard. And the kindness kind of leaves the building, and instead there's this expectation of them to kind of sit and do. And if you're not a brain-based learner, you know, and you're a body-based learner, you need to be able to actively move and do things you've seen as disruptive, and then kindness really isn't something that you're shown, because people get irritated with you and they can be quite mean. So I think first of all, it's about recognising treating others how you want to be treated. But secondly, for me, I'm a big believer in equity. I'm a big believer in equality. Not equality. Is very different, isn't it? You know, it's very different, isn't it? You know, if I'm being behaviours to other people, that's going to mean behaviours to other people. Just as you said, that's going to mean different things for different people. Just as you said, if you're not comfortable in receiving an apology, if you're not comfortable in receiving an apology in that moment or sitting in that vulnerability, it's actually really selfish of me in a kind of prolonged way. You know, where let's have an extracted conversation about this. Let's have an extracted conversation about this because I need to be able to, because you're uncomfortable. You know, instead we want to do it in a safe way. Instead we want to do it in a safe way. So Suzy, you might want somebody when you're apologising. Maybe you don't.
don't, I don't know. But
other people I might want somebody to just help me do the dishes
as a way to be
kind.
as a way to be kind. So it's recognizing
that each person needs something different.
And I think it goes back to the conversation we were having at the beginning, that it's about recognizing each person's different needs and having a kind of growth mindset around that allows you to be equitable and offer adaptations and accommodations in the way that we interact with them so that we can be truly kind. Because to me, that's kindness, is recognizing what another person needs and then offering that, you know?
Yeah, that is kind of what is missing now. We're very insular. And it is so weird because during the COVID pandemic, there was more sense of community in that time period than I had seen. But what was interesting was it was all online, basically. So how did that work and why have we now lost it again? Why, as soon as we're released from the homes, do we become yet again insular?
Do you know what I think it is? I couldn't tell you the answer and I don't know the kind of research on it, but my gut instinct on it is that it was a shared experience and that we were collectively scared and anxious and living this new normal that did not feel normal, and we were trying to cope with it, and so we retreated to online space to find community and connection together, because that was obviously massively missing, wasn't it?
Well, and we were being denied physical interaction, so of course we would seek out some kind of social or meaningful interactions.
Absolutely, yeah. And for some people, it actually probably felt safer. I know there were a number of people who were like, "I loved it."
Yeah. It was quite interesting actually, because I remember the first day so vividly. It was a sunny day. I stepped out into the garden and there was silence. I had never heard such a beautiful silence. And I think that was probably a major indicators of how I was overwhelmed without even realising it, because then I hadn't been diagnosed. It's kind of like, how do we bring back that feeling without having to go to war? Because that's basically the same thing, isn't it? We were in it together. How can we do that when we are no longer needing that tribe, I suppose?
And this is the issue, isn't it? We had a shared enemy, I suppose, which was, the kind of the virus. But then as soon as we got into some of the political side of things, of course, it fractured people again. Are you okay with the way that the politicians behaved or not? That puts you on one side or the other. And so it became fraction between people, because you more tribes that were smaller, I suppose, but there wasn't that collective kind of shared experience across an entire country, or across the world, actually, So it was massive. I don't think anyone in their lifetime has experienced anything quite like it. And in some ways a little bit scary. You got to wonder about aspects of this, and I don't know whether we'd be able to create it again, because there was such a sense of it being fabricated in some ways. I don't know whether people might not behave in the same way if we had the same thing happening. So I don't think it's something that we can recreate. But, when we had those people standing at the door, clapping for the NHS, beautiful sense of containment and connection and gratitude. And I think that probably gratitude is one of those things that can bind us together. If we can be more grateful, there's loads of really good research on gratitude. If we are more grateful and we keep gratitude journals and we log our gratitude and we notice it, actually we become happier and more grateful. So it's one of those things, the more you practice it, the more you have it. So I think that probably is part of it.
Yeah, I think gratitude was in a study that I can't quote because I can't remember it, but it was literally found to be one of the determining factors as to whether someone developed PTSD after a traumatic event, or whether they went on to experience post-traumatic growth.
Wow.
And it was a daily gratitude practice.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I think it's that thing, isn't it, that there are some people who find that more challenging because of the way that their brains are structured, the way that their lived experiences have been. But also, again, same as I said at the beginning with kindness, it's something that you can learn. It's a technique that you can develop and you can grow into if you practice it enough. So simple things like literally keeping a gratitude journal and writing 3 things a day that you're grateful for at the end of each day can massively boost your feelings of happiness and containment, but also can help you to cope with stresses more successfully in life, And I think I watched this really amazing, it was this advert
And it was a family just waking up and going through their morning, and they put a bow on everything that they were grateful for. And so they were literally putting it on the tap because there was running water, and they were putting it on their cereal, and they were putting it on the car because it got, and they were, all the things that we, the heater and all things like that maybe we just do take for granted. I think maybe in COVID we weren't taking things quite as for granted.
Well, yeah, I think during COVID as well, we were just all as a global community. First of all, there was a global community for that was tangible, because for the first time we were all facing the narrative was an existential threat, and so we were kind of shaken out of our comfort zone quite abruptly, and then we were held in that, or holding each other whilst we found the ground.
I loved it. Yeah. I shall be honest, it was just one of those things. It does sort of, the gratitude journal is a fantastic idea. What I'll try to do is get some links and pop that onto the podcast. In regards to being online, how can you be kind but also keep yourself safe?
Boundaries.
It's so important.
Sorry, I just said boundaries. That's one of my favourite words. Boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries are so hard. They're so hard to do. But yeah, I think we need to teach children and adults about, digital citizenship, and essentially that's about being a good neighbour online, though. So being, as you would with your next door neighbour, being a good, kind person, considering them, being thoughtful and being compassionate and kind. You want to do that in a digital sense. It's harder because you're behind the screen, and there's less accountability, I think, which affords people opportunities to say some of the stuff that maybe they shouldn't or wouldn't say. And so the only way to manage that is to increase empathy and show acts of kindness on a daily basis, and also be very explicit about the damage that can be done when we are faceless assassins online and we say horrible things to people in ways that can be really damaging. It's worrying, because I think there was a Stacey Dooley documentary recently where she went to another country where people were online and they were interacting with people on there and telling them to do horrible things to hurt themselves. And she said to them, people are hurting themselves. They are killing themselves as a result of the things that you're saying. And they said, we don't care. We don't care. And so their digital citizenship was very poor. And so we have to not only manage the way that our children and the way that we interact online with other people, we have to make sure that they feel safe enough to come to adults when something goes wrong, because invariably things do go wrong online, even if it's just a WhatsApp chat with a group of year sixes. I've had awful things that I've been told about things that are happening between children on there, where adults are getting involved, calling children names, awful things. And a child that I knew sat with being called the most horrific names by an adult in a group chat over the weekend, and no grown-ups knew about it because the children weren't telling them. So it's really important that we have these conversations really explicitly with kids, because if we don't, it all goes completely under the radar and then we miss it. And unfortunately, this is where really horrible things happen, because kids are feeling bullied and there's no end to it. The reality is, these phones that we have, we're accessible all the time. And I think I've felt that a lot. If someone needs me, they can just text me or call me, and no matter what time of day it is, I can be available. But we shouldn't be. So we have to try and find a way to be safe in those interactions, and making sure that our kids are doing the same.
In a sense, we need a sort of digital driving test.
Yeah.
So
completely, because we need to teach people. Yeah,
it's so shocking that these people who are like, as you call them, the online assassins, when faced with what they have actually done, don't care.
Oh, I know.
That beggars belief. It really does.
Yeah, it does, yeah. And I think it's just groups of people who have experienced hardship or trauma. I can't help but see kind of victims in all of the sides of it. They are victims of their circumstance and their lack of experience in empathy and being empathised with and having support from other people. And they are obviously in such a dark place in their own lived experiences that they can't muster enough strength to be compassionate for other people. And typically that happens when you've not had compassion given to you.
So a lot of these online,
you
want to ask something, don't you? A lot of the online assassins, because this is one of the things that is the one I tried to challenge on my TikTok.
Right.
And sometimes it works. You show them kindness and they either disappear or they actually start talking to you as a human being. But clearly that is just such a tiny section, and the bigger picture is more disturbing than I realised, really.
Yeah, it is. It's worrying. And when you I think the thing that's hard, so I don't like putting myself out there on social media. I find it uncomfortable. I find it awkward. I feel embarrassed. I feel kind of shame, all sorts of stuff. What I've recognised is that the drive to want to help is bigger than my discomfort. And so I push past it. But of course, when you do that, you open yourself up to being criticised, being called names, people disagreeing with you. I had people say things like, she's not a real psychologist and she doesn't know what she's talking about. And I'm like, my certificate says different. And my 3 years of stress doing the doctorate says different. But then you have to, so it affects and can attack your self-esteem and your feelings of self-worth. And so you have to surround yourself with people that can lift you up and can help you feel safe. But then also you have to be able to muster the kind of internal cheerleader that says, no, they're living their thing and you're living your thing. And you need to recognise that your worth isn't tied up in whether they believe you're worth it or not. But that can be really hard. That can be really tricky.
Yeah, so listening to what you're saying, one thing that connected with me was the conversation around resilience, but at the same time, allowing social support. Because you can be resilient and you can use whatever strategies you use to get through, but that doesn't provide that biological, it doesn't provide the oxytocin.
I think the thing sometimes that we think about resilience is that it's just pushing through and it's just getting through it with grit, And actually, you're so right when you were speaking earlier about the vulnerability to trust somebody, to apologise, and it's the same in being resilient. I can only be resilient if I acknowledge that I'm facing a stressor and something that's difficult to manage. Because if everything's easy breezy for me, I don't need to be resilient. I just get, life's just easy. I get through it. So I have to acknowledge that something's hard, and that can be really vulnerable. This was, for me, saying that my doctorate was a hard thing to do is like an understatement. It was it was probably the hardest thing I've had to, apart from being a mother. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and I'm still kind of living that difficulty. That can be quite vulnerable, because if I say that, does that mean that I'm not good at it? If I had to work really, really hard at something, does that mean that I'm not a natural and that it's something that I am forcing? So what does that mean about who I am and my skill set and what it looks like? So it can be really vulnerable to acknowledge that you found something hard and that you had to work at it. But actually, if we don't find things hard, we can't build resilience. So we kind of have to sit with that trauma and that challenge sometimes.
And I think just hearing you speak as well, I'm reflecting on what I said, and I maybe had a bit of a fallacy that resilience means that you've got to get through it by yourself. Right. Whereas actually it is having the skills to allow other people to be there.
Yeah, 100%.
Which leads me on to another stream. I'm sorry. I love
this.
Feel free to tell me to shut up. But I often joke with Suzy that I am allergic to a certain amount of kindness and love above like a threshold. I'm like, I've got my threshold. Yeah. Anything more than that, like, it's poisonous.
And now he's got me. Yeah.
But hearing you describe kindness and acts of kindness as an acquired skill, surely the receipt and the acceptance of that, you can build up tolerance of that as well. I was gonna ask how one might go about, I want to make it broad for the listeners.
Yeah.
Like desensitizing yourself to it.
Yeah, like to anything, like desensitizing, or like acclimatizing myself to that. Or if people can take that further into other spheres of their life to talk about reacclimatizing to any other kind of stimulus. I don't know.
I actually can see, I think I see what he's saying here. I just wanted to check. Basically, it's kind of like asking, can you teach people to accept kindness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, we could get into a whole conversation about attachment styles.
We could, yes.
And I think, you know what? So the way I think about it, if someone has experienced trauma in terms of like physical hurt from somebody, so if I work with a child who has witnessed and experienced violence in the home, I don't say that that kid then does not need any physical touch. They actually just need safe physical touch, because they need to learn how to receive touch in a safe way, because they've not experienced that previously. If we were to say they need no physical touch because they've experienced hurt, we are depriving them of some of the benefits of close connection and being able to become sensitized to it. Now, that's on one side. The other thing to say is that everyone does have their limit and their own boundary, and it's really important that we respect and recognize that. You know, some people, my sister, for example, she's not a tactile person, and so if I stand a little bit too close to her, she'll just take a little bit of a step to the side. And I'm like, are you feeling uncomfortable, Chantal? And she's like, just a little bit. Whereas I'm quite a tactile person, so it doesn't bother me. And so I have to recognise that that's her boundary, and we're safe and comfortable enough that we can kind of talk about it and laugh about it. But other people might not feel like that. And so sometimes you can get quite overwhelmed with that physical closeness, or what the noise level, or whatever it might be, or even just words of affirmation. They might just feel a little bit too much and can feel overwhelming for somebody. So yes, we can desensitize ourselves to it to a degree, but I think it's also really important to recognize our own boundaries and limits, and that they are okay, and that actually we might express and receive love and kindness in a different way. Have you come across the work on love languages at all?
I've had this conversation with Suzy. The different people have different love languages.
Oh, right.
But if you'd like to explain it,
I mean,
because you've got a doctorate, so she will listen to you.
So rude.
well,
Sorry,
sorry.
I didn't mean that to trivialise your doctorate at all.
No, but it's a valid point.
Well, it doesn't,
but
it's
I
fine.
do listen to him. He just thinks, oh, that's all. But yes, it would be good to understand the love language concept.
Yeah, there's some controversy over it. Some people don't agree with it, but I like it I'm not suggesting it's like a hard and fast rule. But I think as a framework, it can be really helpful just to open up the conversation around how we receive love and kindness, and how we also express it. And different people will express and receive love and kindness in different ways. And so for me, there are 5, and I always forget one. So it's Dr. Chapman. It started off in the work of relationship therapy, and acknowledged that people express and receive love in different ways. And so there is words of affirmation, acts of service, physical touch, receiving gifts, and
something to do with time.
Quality time. Yes, thank you. Well done. So there are these 5 different love languages, and essentially the idea is that we all receive. And if let's say I'm an acts of service person and I help people all the time, which is, you know, my primary love language, and so I'm helping people, making dinner, taking food around to them, I'm cleaning up after them, you know, I'm doing all the jobs that I want to do to try and help. And their love language is quality time. While I'm busy buzzing around doing all the jobs, they're sitting there thinking, this person does not care about me, because I just want to spend some time in with them. And they're busy buzzing around, you know? And so what's happening is it's a miscommunication of these 2 different love languages, where they're just not quite syncing together. And so if we can recognise the people in our lives and in our families, what their love language is, then we can think, actually, how can I express to them love and gratitude and kindness in a way that they can hear and receive it, that feels safe for them. So if I recognise that, maybe what I do is I don't tidy up their laundry, and instead I sit with them and we play a game together, you know? Or maybe if words of affirmation are the thing that's important to them, maybe I write a note in their lunchbox that says how much I love them, you know, or how kind they are, or how much I think of them, or what they did that was wonderful. Really important when we're thinking about that one, words of affirmation, that it's specific. So one of the things I like to tell class teachers to think about when we're looking at kind of GCSEs or SATs or anything like that, is that those children are going to feel measured by a certain criteria. And actually what we can do instead is make sure that we're adding lots and lots of feedback, especially during that time, words of affirmation way that's very specific. So I think you're a really helpful person. Look how nicely you held the door open there. Thank you so much. You're so kind. Things like that. If we can offer that, then it gives children other benchmarks to consider in relation to who they are and how they value themselves, not just a number on a piece of paper. So I think that when we're thinking about love languages, it's really important that we consider the people in our lives, what their love languages are, what the things are that make them feel contained and connected and calm and loved, and also how we tend to feel that way. Because if we can see how we tend to feel most loved and cared for, then we can recognise how we tend to offer it to other people. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah, that's like a whole other podcast, isn't it? It's like, we'll just start a series with you, Dr. Kirsten. That's it. We're just going to, this is what kindness in motion. It's all about the psychology of kindness, which is amazing. Now, as an ending, although I think it's more like a beginning. This has been absolutely brilliant. If you could leave us and educators with one gentle reminder about kindness, something they can carry into everyday lives, what would it be?
Oh, it's a really good question.
I know you asked Dr. Kirsten this, but just one thing that has come to my mind from everything that you've said, it distills down to, is one really kind thing that you can do for other people is to just be more aware of yourself and your world and them as well. And kindness isn't a one size fits all.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's given me some thinking time. I think for me, it would be back to the stuff around primary and secondary reactions to things. So what is your primary reaction? What is your first reaction to something? And is it your true reaction? Be kind to yourself about it. Give yourself grace. Give yourself compassion. Speak to yourself as you would speak to a friend, and recognise that, you can be your own internal cheerleader. Because when we do that, we embody it. And then actually kindness perpetuates out of that, beautiful scenario. And when you have kindness in your heart, and I say heart as in, a metaphorical thing, but when you embody kindness in that kind of way to yourself, you can't help but be kind to other people. So it does, I think, just as you always say, Suzy, it starts at home, and you have to recognise it in yourself and be kind to yourself. And you get all the benefits from that as well. So yeah, I think keeping kindness, starting with you, and it will have repercussions for others as a result.
This was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to actually do this with us. And I'm incredibly excited right now. So I'll probably get down to editing it straight away. It's got to be done. One of the things we do at the very end of our talks is to have a kindness in practice suggestion. So if you were to do a moment of kindness, what would that be?
That's nice. I think when we spoke about the active listening stuff, I think it would be really seeing somebody for who they are and what they are, and then what they need, and providing that, whatever that might look like, and not putting my own judgment on it about what I think they should want or what could help. They probably don't want lasagna. They probably want somebody to come along and offer them a listening ear, or to just say, I don't know how you're coping with that. That sounds really difficult. So true kindness is being present. Yeah, being really present with somebody and allowing yourself the vulnerability to do that.
So being there, yeah. Wow. Okay, we've now got to do our outro, and I can't remember it. But...
Well, I don't know. I just like to say a massive thank you. It's been a real privilege to be able to talk with you.
Thank you so much. It's been a lovely thing to talk about.
Pick your brains and just hear your perspectives as well. So thank you so much.
Has been brilliant. And obviously we will be back in 2 weeks with another guest. Hopefully Billy Fox, the musician. As I say on my TikTok, and I'm going to say everywhere I am, keep safe, keep happy, but most of all, be kind to yourself and to each other.
Oh, thank you for listening, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Kirsten, as well. Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful afternoon, and talk to you again soon.
Yeah,
if this lifted you even a little, hit follow, share it with someone who could use a spark of kindness, and come with us as this movement grows. You're part of this now, and we're really glad you're here.